Welcome to the NCRTM Material Spotlight. I'm Heather Service, the NCRTM Project Manager. This NCRTM Material Spotlight is intended to provide you with information about new NCRTM materials that may help you in your work. A link to the material is available in the YouTube description below. Today, we are joined by John Walsh, Project Director with the Center for Innovative Training in Vocational Rehabilitation, also known as CITVR. Welcome, John. I know you wear a lot of hats, so tell us a little bit more about some of the other hats you wear in addition to CITVR.
Thanks, Heather. It's so good to be here today with you to do this recording on a material spotlight. I'm part of the team at the George Washington University Center for Rehabilitation Counseling Research and Education. And I do have a couple hats I wear within that program. Not only am I the project director of the Center for Innovative Training for Vocational Rehabilitation, but I also provide training and technical assistance through the VR Technical Assistance Center for Quality Management and the National Technical Assistance Center for Transition, the Collaborative. I also serve as a faculty member of the National Rehabilitation Leadership Institute that's housed at San Diego State University. And I just have such a great fortune to work with a great group of colleagues at GW. So thanks for having me here today.
Fantastic. We're really excited to have you here. John is going to share a little bit about a CITVR training called Become an Adult Ally, Empowering Youth in Vocational Rehabilitation. And I was fortunate enough to get to watch this live at CSAVR, and it was just such a meaningful topic. The content delivery was amazing, and it really hit the mark when I thought about working with youth. And so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the product. So John, can you tell us a little bit about the evolution and how this product came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. We started to talk about this concept when we were producing a series on rapid engagement in vocational rehabilitation. So we looked at various facets of moving folks more quickly from when they apply to services to actually getting a service that's meaningful to them and their career development. And one of those facets, or module 4, we really wanted to focus on students and youth. And we partnered with the NTAC on this, and DJ Rolston and Sandy Miller from that team, who are also at GW, said, why don't we really look at not only expedited eligibility and that kind of rapid movement to service provision, but let's look more broadly at what we could do to encourage more meaningful engagement, especially with students and youth. So we did that as a kind of first piece. We got some feedback from evaluation, saw that this was an area that people wanted to learn more about. So then we also submitted a proposal to the CSAVR at one of their conferences. And so we did that. And I know, Heather, you were part of that session. And we had a large turnout for this concurrent session, had a lot of good feedback, a lot of dialogue during the session, and said, this would be great if we can move this to an on-demand platform so that more people could get access to this topical area.
Can you tell us a little bit about how individuals or organizations can really make the most of this training?
Yeah, absolutely. The Center for Innovative Training in VR provides all of their training free of charge. They provide CRC, continuing education hours. So individuals, professionals can go on just a one-time registration in order to access our training and interact with that training. We've also learned, though, that training coordinators at state VR agencies also are using it as an onboarding tool for new counselors coming on board. So they may use different parts of our training and then link it with some of the work they're doing to mentor these new counselors or coach these new counselors and learning the skill sets they need to serve the folks that are coming in through their doors.
Can you tell us a little bit more about when we're thinking about who's coming in through the doors at Vocational Rehabilitation Agency? Talk a little bit about some of that shift that we've seen and really why this training kind of hits the mark and fills a big need when VR agencies are thinking about how they're serving students and youth with disabilities.
Yeah, so when we went back and we looked at the RSA 911 data, there's been a huge demographic shift in who is receiving VR services. We know in many state agencies, 50% or more of those folks that are VR participants are those 25 and younger. And that doesn't even include the students we're serving under pre-employment transition services, right? So you're looking at anywhere from 50 to 70% of the folks you're serving are 25 and younger. So we thought it's a significant that we need to really be able to be responsive to those that are walking in our doors.
One of the things I really like about the CITVR trainings and some of the trainings that are produced by partners like the Technical Assistance Centers is how both individual counselors and VR professionals can use these trainings for their own professional development, and also how the organization as a whole can really consider these trainings as part of their onboarding and as part of their upskilling for their VR counselors and their VR staff. So, John, can you talk to us a little bit about how counselors and how some of the VR organizations are using CITVR products like Becoming an Adult Ally, and then sharing some of the impact and feedback that you've gotten about them?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, we know through some of our metrics in regards to who's coming to our website that we have in excess of 9,000 registered users for CITVR. So clearly, members of the VR community have an interest in our training products, and we've had over 30,000 enrollments in our training products overall. So this is definitely tapping into a need. We're also getting really good feedback in our evaluation surveys about how folks are using these trainings and how they're impacting them in actually the work they're doing. So every training we offer, we ask folks to complete a short evaluation survey. And that includes open-ended responses. So they could tell us, yeah, this is how I've used it, or this is how I've shared it with colleagues within my organization. And also, you know, we're hoping that as folks are sharing it with one another, they're also modeling the way on how to actually provide those services. And you know, new counselor may be seeing a more seasoned counselor acting in a certain way where they are that adult ally. And you know, working with youth in a way that the youth feels very included and part of that partnership. I wanted to talk a little bit about when we talk about becoming an adult ally, where do we really start, right? So the first thing we talk about is we need to really, it starts with awareness and acknowledgement, right? So we have to acknowledge that there's power dynamic differentials between a helping professional and a student. And if we don't acknowledge that, we're not going to have the dynamic relationship we're hoping for. So in many ways, the helping professional wants to have not power over the student, but power with the student. And for the student to feel that they're an equal partner in this relationship, that they're going to be engaged in the services and process that are going to move them towards their career goals. So we really wanted to emphasize, let's ask more frequently than tell. Let's ask those questions, let's actively listen, let's connect back to some of the core essentials of what rehabilitation counseling looks like, right? And having that dialogue where we're learning more and where relationship is greater than the task accomplishment. And I know everybody's super busy and we've got to get all the things done that we have to get done. And we have to develop individual plans for employment and we have to do all of that work. But ultimately at the heart of this, it's the relationship with the student, isn't it? That's the key.
Absolutely.
And that's going to help folks become successful.
Yes. Yes. Cool. And so I'm sure you've heard through the feedback and through surveys and just from being so engaged with your users and your participants. Tell us about some of the successes that you've heard and you've seen in the field since this product has been published.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of great feedback from this series, both our in-person, the live webinar we did in collaboration with Yes LMS and CSAVR, and of course the NTAC-C was part of development of this. through those various venues, we've gotten good feedback about how some counselors have, started to use some of these strategies with students and how they're seeing that the impacts are making the difference for how they're working with students, that students are feeling more part of the process, and part of a team effort, as opposed to, that traditional power over instead of power with.
Absolutely. And what about agencies as a whole and some of their challenges that they have with recruiting VR counselors, retaining VR counselors, and then for those that are in the trenches that are doing this work, how is having content like this helping them to continue their development and their skills through some of these products?
Yeah, so one of the core values we have at CITVR is we very much want to get feedback from the full gamut of folks that are accessing our products, right? We feel that is like a core value that is going to help us develop relevant training. And one of the feedbacks one way we set up feedback mechanisms is we have an advisory council at CITVR. And over half of our advisory council members are training coordinators of state VR agencies. We also facilitate a community of practice specifically for training coordinators. And it's a very robust group. And in those interactive sessions, we've gotten so much feedback about how folks are using our training products with their onboarding and also upskilling of their staff. So, and it always does my heart really well when I hear a training coordinator reach out and say, oh yeah, we've used this particular training and it's now part of our onboarding for new staff. And we've also linked it with how new counselors are coached or how they're mentored in implementing some of those skills. So training's the first part, but then that coaching and mentoring is critical so that folks have the skill sets. And as you said, Heather, we came out of a crisis of, the great realignment, if you will, where we had an attrition problem within state VR agencies. Hopefully we're coming to the other end of that, but we also know there's been issues with recruiting qualified personnel, that there just are not enough master's level certified rehabilitation counselors out there to fill some of those vacancies. And so agencies are now challenged to figure out ways to provide the professional development so that folks really have all the skill sets they need to be able to effectively do their jobs.
Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about how folks can access these CITVR trainings that they're interested in learning more about?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to get access to our training products is to go to trainvr.org, and that will take you to a gateway to access all of our training products. So I have up on the screen the landing page for Train VR, and there's at the very top of the landing page, if you go to the right-hand side of the landing page, there are 4 menu items: home, training, resources, and account. Now, to access all of our training products, we ask one thing. We ask for one-time registration. So we're going to ask for your name, what organization you work for, your email address, just some basic demographic. You set up a password, and then once you do the one-time registration, you can come back as many times as you want to access this free training that provides free CRC continuing education hours. We also maintain all of the trainings you completed. So if in your busy schedule you said, oh, I forgot to download some of my certificates, they're all housed there. So you could just go back in and download your continuing education. But let me give you a quick tour, Heather, and your audience, to just tell you about a little bit about our training products. So when you go to the menu item under training, which is again at the upper right-hand side of the landing page, it splits training by topic or by learning path. So let's go by topic first. And there's a number of topical areas that we cover. One, career pathways. We have training related to ethical practices as a rehabilitation counselor, how to use labor market analysis in a 21st century workforce, and in your role as a rehab counselor. We have a series on LGBTQ+. We have ramifications of long COVID for state VR agencies, VR professional self-care and why that's an ethical practice, some general information on service delivery, supervision, trauma-informed care, and youth services. And I'm going to select youth services because that's kind of the spotlight for today on Become an Adult Ally. But you'll see we have a number of training products that we have done either ourselves or in collaboration with other technical assistance centers that relate to the provision of pre-employment transition services. We did a two-part series with the AVERTAC, the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Training and Technical Assistance Center, that really focuses on that state and tribal VR partnership. And we actually provide real illustrations of states that are doing a nice job in those partnerships. So if your state may need a little help in making those partnerships more robust, there's some really great ideas in those training series. And we also just released a training on ethical consideration on the provision of pre-employment transition services and working with youth that really looks at the newly released CRC Code of Professional Ethics and how we should take that into consideration when we're working with students and youth. We also curate training by learning path. And Heather, this kind of gets back to your question about impact. So we've heard from training coordinators, right? We need a help in onboarding new staff, and they're looking for relevant content out there that they can use within developing the skills, the knowledge, and practices for new counselors. So we created some learning pathways by job role, which includes new counselor training and VR essentials. We also did some supervisor essential training. We did a great series, a 5-part series on clinical supervision with Dr. Jim Herbert at Penn State University. And it's kind of one of those, unfortunately, like lost skill sets. And I think a lot of agencies are starting to say, hey, we've got to get back to some of the fundamentals. Let's talk about the critical role of clinical supervision. So some of those pieces are in there. And we also created a learning path for leadership or administrators within state VR agencies. Now, the training is not just the training we created at CITVR, but also with our partners at the VRTAC QM or the NTAC-C. There's also some great training that's still around from previous iterations of TA centers or U.S. Department of Education funded initiatives. We don't want to lose that. And I know that's one of the great things that NCRTM does, is to make sure we don't lose that great knowledge base, right? Let's have a repository where this information can live if it's still relevant to what we're doing in today's VR workplace. We also maintain other resources. We maintain a social media site that we call the NING community, where members of our communities of practice can come. It has discussion boards where people can put relevant questions up. So folks within the community can talk to one another online when we're not meeting via Zoom within our communities of practice. We also have some information on some of the surveys we've done on training needs. So some of our training coordinators out there might be really interested to learn about some of the things we found on a national basis about what folks identified as core training needs. So that's kind of the quick overview, Heather, of trainvr.org.
Yeah, thanks, John. There's a lot of great resources on there, from the training topics to the training needs assessment. I know when I would read training needs assessment, it was always a little heartwarming because you're like, I'm not alone in this. It's not just my agency. It's not just my team, that this is a national issue. And then you're presented with all of these resources and trainings at your fingertips that can really help. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how folks can engage with you and with the material if they have any additional support or need additional information? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to our website at trainvr.org, if you work your way about halfway down the landing page, there's a link that says About the Center. If you click on that link, it will tell you very briefly a little bit about what we do at CITVR, but my email address is there. It's jcwalsh@gwu.edu. And we also have the email address for our director, uh, Dr. Marie McGuire Coolets, also at GW. So love to get email inquiries, love to get feedback. Um, we every time someone completes an evaluation of our training, we go through it. We love to get your feedback, especially that open-ended comments at the very end, when it kind of asks you, what else can you tell us, or what are areas that we can improve? Take a couple minutes and give us that info, because that's going to help inform us about creating those next training products.
And that leads us towards the end here. And John, I just learned so much about your site. I'm hoping our users did too. You heard how to connect with CITVR. We also want to do a plug here for NCRTM as well, so that we can remind you that many of the things that are put out through CITVR, we share, we amplify. We want to make sure that the field and the community know about the great work that's happening and the trainings that are coming out. So we encourage you to go to the NCRTM website, which is ncrtm.ed.gov. And if you use the top navigation bar, you'll see a tag that says Join the NCRTM Network. And this leads you to how to connect with NCRTM. You can sign up for our newsletter, which goes out about once a month. So we can stay up to date on all of the new trainings that come out. There's some great content for individuals with disabilities. We have some updates from RSA that we share. We also are very serious about customer feedback. So if you would take a moment to fill out a survey, we do read them all. We read all of your comments. So if you like this video or you would like to see other videos like this, please send us your topics. We would love to hear from you. Also on the Join the NCRTM Network page, you can subscribe for our monthly library updates. This is once a month. All of the materials that have been added to the NCRTM library are sent out in list form, so you'll never miss a material. You'll get to stay up to date on everything that's coming out. And then last but not least, social media. We encourage you to visit our YouTube channel, where we publish videos like this NCRTM Material Spotlight, or you can also follow us on X, which is formerly Twitter. Our handle is @RSA_NCRTM. So as we kind of wrap up, we've heard a lot about the Becoming an Adult Ally. You've taken us a tour on the site. Do you have any final words or final thoughts that you want as a key takeaway for our folks who watch this video today?
What I would say is your professional development is critical. And I think the Innovative Rehabilitation Training Program was a really just genuinely innovative way in order for us to provide training to our VR community. We not only put out training products that are related to what we're producing, but also our partners. If you haven't already joined our newsletter, I would really highly suggest you do that. It's really simple to get on our mailing list. You could either just go on to our website at trainvr.org, register one time, it automatically puts you in our mailing list. Or if you don't want to do that, there's actually a way to click a link and just say, join our email list. And that way you can get any of the notifications we send out about any of our training products.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today, John, and taking your time to share with us the important work that CITVR is doing. We appreciate your time.
Heather, I greatly appreciate this opportunity and love the partnership with your team as well.
The National Clearinghouse of Rehabilitation Training Materials, NCRTM, is maintained by New Editions Consulting, Inc., and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education Rehabilitation Services Administration, RSA, under contract number 91990021C0033. However, these contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government.